All right, we're in the Thursday session for Bitcoin. I've been making videos every single day for Bitcoin, if you haven't noticed, because we've had a lot of volatility with Bitcoin, and I'm trying to keep you posted of what's going on. And I talked about if we went lower, which we did with Bitcoin, we can hit our 200 period. We came to just above it. It was a simple moving average. I believe we hit the EMA, the 200 EMA. Did hit that, and we bounced off of that, and we came just above the simple moving average right here. Going to be watching if we move back towards the moving averages, the 10 and 20 period moving average. So what I'm going to watch for is to see if we try to rebound off the 200 and go back to fill the gap on the IBIT ETF. We are seeing distribution with the ETF. Now, I do want to say this. We've dropped below the 100 period moving average, and we're holding below it. That's not good. We've got to be able to get back above that level, and then the 50 period, the green line there, and break this downward trend line if we're going to try to resume the advance. If you go watch my other video on the Wrong Walker channel, I talk about, and I'll link it at the end of this video. Today we had the inverting of the yield curve once again between the 10 minus 3 month. That's telling us recession is getting ready to happen. We had that happen in 2007 where we had an inverted yield curve, then it uninverted, and then it inverted again. Recession started shortly thereafter, which means we're getting very, very close to the recession. And again, it's in denial we're going to have a recession. The herd's in denial we're going to have a recession. Now maybe they're believers. You got people now believing and shook up. But this is a preview of coming attractions. We can get back up. I think we're going to back up above the 50 period moving average and go challenge the highs. Then again, we could get the final blow off top. It'll be exactly, though, oh, it's over. But they'll be, if that happens, they'll be exactly as they were over here. When I told you over here, we were peaking in January on Inauguration Day. We're here in December. Again, there was so much complacency. My signals have been consistently bearish. I told you I thought we would go back and test the January low and get a higher low. And I told you if I was wrong about that, that we would come back down and get a lower low. And again, I still think we're in wave 4. The inverting of the yield curve again tells us we have more time. If you go watch my video, you'll understand why. So go watch that video at the end of this one. But again, the herd is very, very bearish here, and we're probably going to bottom out and rebound back up. And then we'll see if we go back, fill the gap, do we take out this trend line, and can we get back above the 100 period moving average? We above and below it with this consolidation over here previously from March, the March peak on into the early fall. We jumped around and then again below the 100 period, bounced off of it, below it, back above it, below it, back and forth, and again found a test of it here when we got back above it and bounced and held above it, but we get something like this where we've dropped below the 100 period, but we end up getting back above it. Can we stay above it? Here we couldn't do it, finally did it over here and off to the races. So did we see that happen again with Bitcoin? Again, the risk is if we don't get back above it, the risk is Bitcoin's topped and you stop making new highs. But if you get back above the 100 period, which is coming in at our trend line at the moment, then again, Bitcoin could try to get back above that and try to resume the advance over the next several weeks. Trump rattling the markets again. He rattled them earlier, rattled Bitcoin earlier this week. Again, you got the moon boys out there. Trump said he was going to give us, the strategic reserves, the Bitcoin reserves, and he's giving us a trade war. Trump announced today, rattled markets, announcing that he was going to do tariffs on the EU at 25%. Again, he was talking about the data for the reciprocal tariffs coming into play on April 2nd. That data is supposed to be on his desk to review on April 1st. I don't know if he's going to implement them immediately. Maybe he delays it. Maybe there's negotiations like what we saw with Canada and Mexico. There were concessions out of Canada and Mexico. Maybe we get more. We have other, and there was some confusion about the Canada-Mexico tariffs going into play April 2nd. The White House later clarified that after Trump's first cabinet meeting that the tariffs for Canada and Mexico are still on for next week on March 4th. So again, maybe there's further concessions out of Canada and Mexico, and we see those delayed again, and Wall Street celebrates that and the tax cuts or whatever. But the House just passed the tax cut bill, and they not only got the 2017 tax cuts extended in that bill, the 2017 tax cuts extended, but they also got the middle class tax cuts that Trump campaigned on, and that was supposed to be later in the year. They did it all in one package. The market could really rally on the tax cuts, and so could Bitcoin. See, the market and the crypto community, they love Trump's economic policies. They love them. And his deregulation, they absolutely love them. And his crypto policies, but they hate his tariffs because they believe they're going to cause a trade war and cause inflation. Tariffs don't cause inflation. Sorry, they don't. Fed believes that, but they believe a lot of Keynesian nonsense, Keynesian economics, which is what they do. That's why we're about to have a recession, because of their policies that are going to cause the recession. It's going to be very, very bad, and Bitcoin's going to begin to price that in. Now, did it right here? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we still go higher, but we're coming down. I told you if we go down and we break this level, the January low, that again, the risk is that we come down here, the 200 period moving average. If we rally back up, again, I want you to remember that this is happening. If we end up going and making new highs, I want you to remember this is happening. This is a preview of coming attractions. Everybody's angry right now. Off those trend lines up here, they told us this wasn't going to happen. I correctly called this, but I told you I thought the January low would hold. I thought we were coming back here to the support zone, and I thought we would bounce there. But I told you what would happen if I was wrong about that. That again, we would go lower and probably get the wave forward not completing over here, but over down here, and our 200 period is directly below, which we're now testing. Just real fast, Bitcoin is currently up in the daily time frame. We're up 0.75%. Bitcoin for the Wednesday session was down by 5%. It was down as low as 7%. We didn't close there, but again, the 200 was tested here, and we bounced off of that level. NVIDIA just did that 2 days ago, and we'll be watching to see what happens with the earnings. They were positive earnings, by the way, and after hours, it rallied initially, and then it kind of was flat last time I looked at it. We'll see how it closes tomorrow, watching to see if NVIDIA bounces off the 200 or drops below it. Right now it's bouncing. Bitcoin do the same. Quickly, I just want to let you know we are getting, with the bottoming tail on the hourly chart, we are getting a 13.9 reversal pattern. It was a 9 count, but gave us the peak up here, and some of these counter trend rallies in the hourly time frame, we're getting a 13.9. Sometimes these counts play out, sometimes they don't. But we're getting this bottoming tail, the 13.9 in the hourly time frame, and that's given us a divergence in the 4-hour time frame as we're hitting the 200 period and the trend lines in the daily time frame. So I think you got a good shot that we're going to try to get some kind of rebound. The 9 and the 13 counts, they show price exhaustion in a certain direction. And here we have a 9 fall by 13. That's a double sequence count, and it's associated with a reversal pattern. Now, maybe it gives us a bounce, but it could also lead to a reversal. More commonly associated with a reversal. We got this bullish divergence that I told you, if we go down to the 200 period, we're forming this bullish divergence with momentum. And again, that could give us traction off of the 200 period. Again, signals have been bearish since that reversal over here on many, many signals. And then eventually we saw momentum signals turn bearish, but we saw trend signals turn bearish, and they remain bearish. So again, we're going to be watching to see. But like I said, again, to be watching the January low. Did we take it out, or did we bounce off of it? You had a pretty good chance that we'd bounce off of it, but we did not. We broke that support level, and signals continued to remain bearish. Again, now you have a divergence in play, but you got to be able to see a rebound and a reversal, and then get the oscillator back into positive territory. Again, we're moving to that 200 period. We already hit the 200 EMA here. We'll be watching this area closely, but again, balance of power has been negative. Signals are bearish. We'll see if we try to bottom with bullish divergences that are forming everywhere on indicators, but it's all over the place. I do have a lot of divergences that are developing as we're moving to test that 200 period moving average with today's low rebound off of the test of the 200 period. We didn't quite tag it, but we came to just above it. Now, I talked about in yesterday's video about going deeper into oversold territory on the RSI, and that's what we are doing, and we ended up getting another drop here. And again, we talked about this 200 being tested. We talked about the 200 and that coming in near this trend line right here. Now, here is a trend line from the 49,000 low from August. I've excluded the shadow here, and if you pull it straight up, that's the area where we're coming into contact near that 200 period. We're trying to get a bounce there right now. We've moved up off of the lows. We're going to be watching, do we have a tradable bottom? If we do, the problem is, do we just go up and back test this broken trend line from the low here and the low here? We broke that level. Do we go up and back test that and end up going lower if we do bounce? The risk is that we don't bounce and we drop below the 200 right now. But if we do bounce, now you have the 100 and the 50 as resistance, the moving averages, and the cloud of resistance. You see, Bitcoin follows the 100 period. It was choppy over here, and maybe we have that again. We're choppy here. Maybe we get above that. And eventually we did over here. We did get above the 100 period. We pulled back, we back tested it, and we went higher. We could see that again for the final climax move. Final phase of the blow off top. But we now have resistance. And Bitcoin, when it's below the 100 period moving average, and we tried to bounce off of it, then we broke, took out the January low. When Bitcoin is below the 100 period moving average and stays below it, bad things are happening, which we're seeing right now. You got to be able to get back above the pink line, the 100 period, back above the cloud to turn it around. We're seeing distribution volume, but we've gone negative. We've gone negative into negative territory here with the MACD. There's no divergence. We had the negative divergence give us the December top, and another divergence give us the January top at that trend line of resistance in the weekly time frame. We've turned down off of those trend lines that I've been talking about twice now. So again, the question now becomes, again, and here you can see the divergence right here with the December peak and another reference point of a divergence here with the January top. Multiple point divergence. That's given us a sell-off. So the question now is, can we recover, or does Bitcoin stop making new highs? Again, my guess is we're going to go up and try to get the final climax rally. And if you go watch my video, you'll see why. Because we got the inverting of the yield curve once again, and I think that can buy us more time to rally. When it happened, the last two recessions, the market went and made new highs, but then it collapsed after that. It's predicting recession is coming. That video you need, and let me bring up the linear chart. I look at both linear and log scaling. Some people just look at the linear. I look at both. The linear, we had this trend line excluding the shadow, and we broke it. Okay, and if you include the shadow, and it moved ever so slightly on me, we're bouncing off of that level right there at the 200 period moving average. Now, let me just adjust that. These trend lines, you save them and they move on you. It drives me nuts, but I love the charts. But again, connecting this low and this low, we've come right up and we're hitting that level here at their linear scaling. So again, with the log and linear scaling, we're hitting these trend lines of support surrounding our 200 period. The problem is that we may be, if we can't get above the 100, we can't get above this trend line, then you have a possible new downward channel that could be developing here from these lows back over here. So that's where something worth paying attention to. And the next rebound back up, do we stall in this area here? If we move back into the trading range, do we stall at the trend line in the 100 and the moving averages? If we do rebound, do we stall there and then come back and break these trend lines? Should we bounce off of them? And I think you're probably going to do that. Or do we clear these levels and you get the final move? Do we have a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, and now we get a 5? So again, we're paying attention to what happens around the 200 period here and this trend line. A lot of people on social media are saying, well, Bitcoin's not crashing for no reason at all. Well, it is. Bitcoin's not going to do well with tariffs. We're going to be watching to see what happens here surrounding this area. Reaching this area of support, there's not much way in the way of support here until you get to your 200 and your trend lines here. We'll see if we can get traction off of those levels. With Bitcoin dropping back below the 100 period moving average and losing the cloud of support, that's not good. The trend indicator is validating that going into the negative region. Now, we've done that over here in the choppiness, and maybe we get back into positive territory. And if we do, then maybe we go to new highs, the upper end of the channel line. I think that's likely going to be the case. But if Bitcoin can't get above the 100 period, if it can't get above the cloud, and it can't get back into the positive region with the trend indicator, then the risk is that we stay below the 100 period, and bad things happen when you're below the 100, like this stuff over here. This stuff over here is when you're below the 100, and trend indicator remains negative. Okay? So when the trend indicator is positive, then good things are happening, and you're above the 100 period, and you're in positive territory, and you're bouncing off the cloud and the 100 period moving average. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. All my signals have been consistently bearish since the peak on January 20th. I thought we'd find a bottom at that January low. We broke it. So now we've done technical damage. And again, Bitcoin is either going to have to repair itself and get back above the 100 period and bottom out like we did over here. Eventually we made attempts at it and eventually it happened. Or Bitcoin is at risk of not being able to make new highs anymore. So that's the risk. That 100 period, we've got to be able to get back above that level. The divergences gave us the sell-off on the daily chart with the RSI and down here in the MACD, and then we had another reference point of it. I didn't mark it here on this one, but I have on the other ones, but given us a sell-off. Now we've had this drop, this big drop over the last 3 days, and again, we've been dropping since the 20th. January, when we got our reversal signal, was Inauguration Day with Trump. So here's the Elliott wave count that I think, again, over here at the March peak, I think you had your intermediate wave 3. I think you got the intermediate wave 4 at 49,000. I think we've now started the intermediate wave 5, and it's unfolding in these 5 minor waves. And you got wave 1, wave 2, and then all of this is likely wave 3. And then you've got now this wave 4 if we can find support here. If we do, then we need to be able to get back above the 100 period moving average, back above the cloud, and we need to be able to go higher to go wave 5. The risk is that this is wave 5, and that's it. Bitcoin stops making new highs. My guess is Bitcoin's going to make new highs, but again, if the weekly signals are weakening right now, and if we don't get a rally back up, some of them are at risk of turning. We need to see if buyers come in, and again, we are very oversold on the RSI. Very good chance we're going to see something surrounding our 200 period, just below it or just above it here as we're trying to get right now. We have bullish divergences as we're hitting the 200 period moving average. So I think IBIT's going to go back and fill the gap, watching the downward trend line to see what happens. Show you the Elliott wave count a little bit differently here. If we can bottom around the 200 period, then you've got a good shot of, if we can get above the 100 period, back above the 50, then you got a good shot of a 5-wave move higher. Okay, and again, this could go on into April, or if Trump extends the tariffs, extends the start date of the tariffs, then it can go on even, to the end of April or on into May. Favorable seasonality for Bitcoin is in March and sometimes to the beginning of April, as I've talked about. I talked about it in my last update. So I think, again, you've got your 3 here, your 4 here, and now you're getting your 5. Risk is that we just went a little bit higher and that you had a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's a risk that we've topped. Bitcoin stops making new highs. Now, if you go watch my video, you'll see why I think the S&P is still going to go make new highs, and I think Bitcoin will probably do the same, because it's getting the second inverting of the yield curve, and I think that buys us more weeks. I think it buys us more time. Go watch that video and you'll understand what I'm saying. about the inverting of the yield curve for the second time. It's telling us recession's about to happen. The recession, everybody's telling us, no way, we're going to have a soft landing, and it's a bunch of nonsense. So again, if this is in fact wave 4 in this ABC structure, could we see it followed by the final blow off top? And again, we are seeing extreme fear right now with Bitcoin, extreme fear with the fear greed index, also seeing extreme fear with the stock market. So can we put in a bottom? Now, as we're hitting the 200 period moving average, possibly completing an ABC move, we are getting some bullish divergences on our intraday charts. But real fast, here it is on the weekly. And again, if we are completing minor wave 4, because we validated that it completed at the January low, then again, do we rally up into this trend line? I still think you're going to rally up into this trend line. I think S&P is going to rally up into this trend line. That's what I think. Possible I'm wrong about that. We just got this kind of truncated fifth wave, and that's it. But this is what I think is likely going to be the case right here. You got to be able to get back above the 100 period. And Bitcoin's lost the 20-week moving average now. It's got to get back above the 20-week. And it stays below, if it stays below those levels, that's extremely bearish. A bounce and get back above those levels. We're taking out the 100 period. We've got to be able to get back above it. So this is what I still think is going on. But again, the risk is that on the next rally, we stop making new highs. We can't break the trend line. We can't get above the 100 period moving average. Watching this going forward. Can the tax cuts help? It passed in the House. It's going to go in the Senate now, and the president will sign it. Once it gets through the Senate, the president will sign it. Will that help the market? That help Bitcoin? Watching. I think that we rally with the tax cuts, but then we're going to sell off with the tariffs, and I think this is a preview of coming attractions. And the signals turn bearish back up at the highs, and they've remained consistently bearish. We have momentum. Try to turn back to bullish a couple times, and it's failed. We had this rally right here, and it failed at the 50 period moving average in the daily time frame. We lost horizontal support, and we've seen the bottom here fall out of Bitcoin, but we're forming these divergences on the intraday charts, and so I'm watching to see, does that give us traction off of the 200? And here on the 30-minute chart, we turned back up, and we got another reference point of a divergence right there, and on the RSI. So again, can we rebound back up off of that 200 period moving average? Here's the 30-minute chart. Here's the 15. We lost the 200 period here, and we've been holding below it, and the 50 is holding below it. Had a divergence here. Now you got another reference point of a divergence right here. A little divergence formed with this low right here and this low right here. So you have these multiple point divergences. Does that give us maybe possibly an inverse head and shoulders off of the 200 period? That's certainly possible in play if we rally back up to this level and then eventually pull back. Could we get an inverse head and shoulders? That's certainly a possibility. Right now, too early to tell if that is going to play out, but wanted to show you that here on the 15-minute chart. And the hourly chart, we've continued to have, after the rising wedge and the reversal off of the 50 period in the daily, that's where we got resistance. We broke down, the rising wedge broke down, and we saw the RSI drop below 50, and then we saw the drop below 50 here. We've been consistently below the 50, getting rejection at it. Here we rallied towards it. We continue to get rejection off the 50 period. We're consistently in negative territory on the RSI here on the hourly chart of Bitcoin. But now we formed this divergence right here. And I talked about, again, we might get a test of the 200 if this divergence right here is not done. We had a divergence right here, but it only gave us a bounce, and then we got another push lower. So again, do we now have a 5-leg push down into the 200 period? And whoops, sorry about that. And do we have a divergence now with these lows, and now this low? We got a bottoming tail. We ended up dropping about 7%, and the buyers came in, and we got this bottoming tail and a hammer candlestick here in the 60-minute time frame. That's given us a hammer also in the 4-hour time frame. And I told you with this divergence right here, we didn't have a divergence on the 4-hour chart. Now we do. And we also have a bullish divergence on IBIT in the 60-minute time frame. So do we come back up here? Do we try to form this inverse head and shoulders pattern? Very, very possible. Bitcoin's famous for making inverse head and shoulder patterns. And I think I cut this off a little bit for you. Let's bring it up close so you can see it. But let me zoom out here for a second, and you can see the possibility of that inverse head and shoulders here. So again, I think that's a strong possibility. If we get a big rally up here and then we pull back and then we break up through this level, I think we can go back and we can try to fill the gap on IBIT, and then we'll see what happens at the trend line, that downward trend line, moving towards the downward trend line, moving towards probably the 200 here on the 60-minute chart. And then we'll see, do we get above the 200 or do we get rejection at it? So the 50, the 100, and the 200 period moving average. But you've got this now multiple point diversions and a bottoming tail here on the 60-minute chart. So we'll be watching to see if this low can hold and can we rally off of this level. And again, maybe we get positive tariff news. Maybe Trump doesn't go forward with the tariffs next week on Canada and Mexico. If there's a delay into April, again, markets may like that, or maybe we rally surrounding the tax cuts. We'll see. Really nice RSI there in the hourly time frame. Look at the bottom tail here. Let's compare that. And we now have this multiple point divergence on the hourly chart. We now have a divergence on the 4-hour chart. Multiple diversions here on the 30 along with that hourly. And here it is. Here is the 4-hour chart, and we've got a bullish divergence now. We've got a bullish divergence on the RSI. We went lower and we completed a bullish divergence there. We got a bullish hammer in the 4-hour time frame. So do we rally up and get this inverse head and shoulders pattern that maybe sets up right into the support zone where we broke? Look at the January low. That's right where that neckline is. Do we end up, or I drew it a little bit high there, sorry, it's right there. Well, I'll get it yet. There it is. Right there, our neckline. So do we come up here, go up to resistance, try to back test, and then everybody thinks it's a back test, and do we get an inverse head and shoulders and come back up into this area? This is the trend line you want to be watching. Again, we've had, all these issues. Now, again, the ETF, the Ethereum hack and the tariffs are all things that created some volatility for Bitcoin. People are saying over the internet, oh, Bitcoin's selling off for no reason. Well, it's selling up because of the tariffs. Could be a preview of coming attraction. So we're going to be watching. Can we come back up, fill the gap on IBIT up in this area, and again, test this trend line, and can we clear it? If we can rally big time, if we get the inverse head and shoulders, and maybe we just blow past this area, if we end up back testing, we drop below the 200 period, that's going to be very bearish. But if we can get up here and we can this trend line, if we can make it all the way up there, and Bitcoin has these exaggerated moves up and down, so I wouldn't rule that out, and we do that, and we come back up here, can we break above that level? We'll be watching this diversions here very closely. It was a bearish divergence that gave us a top. We talked about that back at inauguration day, and again, we had that one-day reversal. We rallied 8%, we reversed, and then we went back up. And again, I told you we had peaked on the 20th on inauguration day, and that has given us this at least so far. Now, again, I thought that this level would hold. I told you I thought that this support zone would hold. Here we broke it. If we can get back above it, then I'll be watching the gap fill on IBIT. But we now have our bullish divergence now complete. Now that we got a triple bullish divergence on the hourly chart, that's completed a bullish divergence here in the 4-hour time frame. This is almost equivalent to the 60-minute chart of IBIT. You're going to see the same divergence on IBIT in a moment. And again, the bullish divergence forming here on the histogram could give us a bullish MACD cross here in the next few days. Now here's the IBIT ETF for Bitcoin. The 60-minute chart looks very similar to the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. Look at the divergence. It looks very, very similar here. We now have a divergence. We didn't have that before. Again, I talked about maybe that divergence is not done yet, and we end up forming it on the 4-hour chart with the hourly chart. We had it, not with the 4-hour chart, and I talked about that in my last update. Here we went a little bit lower. We dropped 7%. The dip was bought. We ended up down 5%, but IBIT just over 4%. again, possible inverse head and shoulders. This is the gap fill, 53.41. I'm watching on IBIT along with this downward trend line right here. And again, we talked about the failed breakout of the bullish falling wedge on Bitcoin. It completely failed, and it gave us this drop. Now, this gap is likely going to get filled. And again, we're getting this bullish divergence on IBIT and Bitcoin on all these intraday charts as it's hitting the 200 period. I talked about if it went lower, watch the 200 period. Again, we may flirt with it a little more, but if we can get the bottoming tail right here on IBIT and on the Bitcoin 4-hour chart there, we could rally. Maybe we get an inverse head and shoulders. Maybe we just go blow past this level and just get an enormous rally and don't form an inverse head and shoulders. That's possible. But if we go back up, there's going to be real concern that we're going to be back testing this area. You can see we gapped lower below the January low right there. So this is resistance. Got to be able to clear that level, get back above the January low, and that is the 50 area, the 65 area or so on Bitcoin, this low over here. The Bitcoin ETF, IBIT. So with all these bullish divergences on the intraday charts, could we be trying to form a bottom surrounding that 200 period moving average? Very possible. Again, you got the bullish divergence here. You're becoming very, very oversold with the stochastics pointing up. I think you're going to try to rally with the bottoming tail, and then we'll see. Do we just, get a big rally and go and off to the races and, get something real big, or do we stall here and end up forming an inverse head and shoulders pattern, and then we clear this 50 level and try to move to 53 to fill the gap? I think the gap is going to get filled. How fast do we do it? We'll see what happens. Bitcoin usually has a favorable month in the month of March, so we'll be watching to see how all of this unfolds. I told you I thought we'd see a bottom this week on Tuesday or Wednesday. We still may have it, but we did go lower than I thought. I thought the January low would hold. And again, I thought we'd go a little bit lower than this low and end up rebounding. I've been correct about the sell-off. My signals have remained bearish, but I was not correct about taking out the January low. But I did tell you what would happen if we did take it out, that we would go down, likely form that minor wave 4. So again, we're going to be watching the next rally. Can Bitcoin start clearing 100 period in the daily? And if we do, we've got to see Bitcoin clear with the Bitcoin ETF get back above the 200 period here. And on the 4-hour chart, the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin, you've got to be able to get back above that 200 period moving average. That's currently where the trend line is. But if we rally towards it, you got to be able to get back above the 50, back above the 200, and then the 50's got to get back above the 200 in order to carve out a bottom. So we'll see what becomes of this divergence here in the 4-hour time frame, here with Bitcoin.